PR Connections Radio presents.
Did you know your clothing could help balance your body's pH levels? Our cutting-edge fabric technology naturally promotes optimal pH balance, helping you feel energized, refreshed, and at your best every day. Use promo code PRTalk for more info. Tap the link in the description or contact our experts at 702-445-9488 to learn more.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Liberating Menopause. I'm Lisa Vasquez, your host. Today, we are working on that caretaking subject. Last episode, I had discussed some of the moments that take place as women are supported by caregivers, brought into departments, going for their appointments, different ways that they are assisted through caregivers. And I also brought up an incident where some of the employees, women in the workplace, and it's just all women in the workplace, we all get affected by some type of injury. Things can happen, and over a long-term period. The subject I had brought up was about a woman who had a knee injury, and over time it just kept accumulating. And when she finally went to go try to resolve it with the surgeons, there was things that she had run into that were going to put a little upset in the design she was trying to create to correct this issue in her life. But she ran into so many obstacles where the support that she did not have. She was a single woman working, menopausal age area in her 50s. She also had barriers that were blocking her with the finance situation, the work situation, because in some jobs, when there is not a lot of family leave operating in a favorable way that it supports you, sometimes it's only just a marker to hold your place in position for that job. And in her case, that was the case. So to take off time, have these extended financial bearings coming toward her, she just kind of chose more to really work it out and walk it out. And in her lifestyle, she had a lot of walking to do. So those effects just really grew. And eventually, when COVID came out, a lot of things changed and a lot of people were sent home, right? I mean, it broke out and really brought a lot of attention on what's actually happening with caregivers and how much of an effect they really have. But today, we have so many millions of caregivers working that are not being paid, their family members, a lot of caregivers that aren't really developing a good support line that really initiates what the woman's looking for in her help, because finding herself at a loss of freedom really has disrupted the whole mentality of the journey she was on as she's traveling through her workplace journey. And now something came up. Now she has gone into a disability situation. And so today I'm excited because I have a great guest today. Her name is Shauna Brennan, and she's a Nevada attorney. And her big thing is she's really big on disability, she's appointed by Nevada Governor Lombardo she's an alumni of Notre Dame Law School. Shauna is an experienced attorney, passionate about protecting the legal rights of older persons and with disabilities. So I'm really excited to talk to her about this side, because we always see the front side of this, but there's so many different things that take place on the back side. As I was saying, when people are brought into their appointments as from caregivers, they're leaving with these caregivers, and there's another side to these things. So today, when I bring Shauna on right now, we're going to be discussing some of the challenges that women go through And again, in my liberating menopause, this is guiding you for the preparedness, for the awareness, because I don't believe that when I was working, only because of the medical field that I was in, I've seen these things. But, when I sit there and try to think, would I really be preparing? Would I really be thinking ahead and wondering if something like this happened to me in the workplace? Again, this is why I bring these visuals to you, because this is the awareness, because we really need to be prepared in today's world as women have taken over the big labor positioning and workplace. So, and then with the disabilities, a lot of women, there's so many challenges that they have to go through in the workplace. So today, I want to welcome Shauna Brennan. She's going to tell us a lot more about what happens on this other side of things when we really need some legal assistance or support from society, from this community. So thank you and welcome, Shauna, for joining me on this podcast.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
So Shauna, so go ahead and tell us about you, about your journey, how you came to this position that you're in today. I've known you've gone through some other changes before in the past, being a lawyer. So now you are right there really giving us a big defense on this subject and disability.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lisa. Well, it's an interesting journey. I call this my sunset job because I've been practicing law for over 30 years, and that's my own gray. And very happy to be aging gracefully in the workplace. That's another issue that women face. In addition to gender discrimination, we face ageism. And then if we're an ethnic minority or a religious minority, probably facing other discrimination. So I've embraced this full-heartedly. I don't try to look younger or act differently. It is, in fact, my experience that makes me a subject matter expert. So I think in some ways we're coming into an age where we as women can really embrace how far we've come and what we have to contribute. And we don't need to be apologizing or falling into the stereotypes. And so what's exciting for me in this position, to touch on some of the things that you identified in your introduction, is that discrimination is a big issue. Of course, we have the protection of the American Disability Act. If somebody has a disability and they're not getting the accommodation in the workforce, they need to be going to their HR. So I think everyone working, well, especially women, we don't usually draw attention to ourselves, talk about our situation that we're in, and we need to do that. We need to be able to put ourselves first sometimes, and that is because of our responsibilities at home, right? The other thing you mentioned was the caretaking. So there's an area that's called the psychosocial pressure, and that pressure includes caretaking. So the women are having young children at home. As we age, we may have our parents in our home the same time as teenagers. We may have a spouse with a health problem. As we get older, many of my peers have grandchildren they're raising. For whatever reason, their children are not able to raise, or maybe they've passed away, unfortunately. And so as women, these pressures tend to fall on us. So it's important, as you mentioned, for us to remain healthy and think of our own health in order to take care of those around us. I have some interesting statistics here about the household responsibilities. Would you like to hear them?
Yes, please.
Okay. So the World Economic Forum has a really great report from 2024. And it says, and this is internationally, so it's not just us women here, for your viewers who are international, that the studies show that the women who have a partner and have children, the women take most of the responsibility for childcare. That has increased since 2023. And they say only 12% fall to the partner. Wow. And that the women are the primary caretaker. That's a lot of responsibility in addition to working. And I think we're happy to do it as nurturers. It's also fulfilling, but we need to fill ourselves first so that we can meet that requirement. That's what you bring to the table. Your expertise is so vital. The other statistic is that they're seeing an increase in the women's responsibility globally to take care of another older adult. Maybe there's an auntie or an older spouse, a parent that they're also taking care, and that is a 57% responsibility on the women. So we're still the majority, the vast majority of the caretaker in the homes. I thought that would be important for your viewers. And the other thing is, to the legal point, in the United States, we do have a Family Medical Leave Act if your employer and if you qualify in your job. And under that, then your job may be protected if you need to take a leave. So I think it's important to understand, maybe meet with your HR and understand what your rights are. Some of the other legal rights are, of course, anti-discrimination, as I already mentioned, disability protection if you need some accommodation in your job. So I'll use an example about the accommodation. If someone comes in and maybe they're vision impaired, if they're blind or sight impaired, or that they are deaf or hard of hearing, then the employer has to make accommodations for them. And so that doesn't mean just give you the computer and hand it to you. It actually means their IT needs to come and fit you up with the actual devices, which are usually more complicated. So this is important to know because we as women are our best advocates. Think of it, Lisa. We advocate for everyone else, right? Why are we not advocating for ourselves? I ask you.
And this is exactly why Liberating Menopause has come out, because of being in the medical field, seeing all these women. They're coming from the workplace. They have their insurance, they're getting their exams done, and a lot of damage. Women, because now that we've joined the workforce, we've been having a lot more injuries, but nobody's putting two and two together with the policy of the menopausal changes that women go through. We have a lot of fluctuations in the healing process. I had spoken past episodes about I always use carpal tunnel. That's the best one, because we're 3 times more at risk in carpal tunnel than men are. We're all on keyboards, but we get injured more because of our fluctuations in the healing process. When you're talking about the women who take over to secure these positions as nurturers, when this comes to our desk, I don't know that anybody, well, I hope they don't, but anyway, that they really feel like, oh my gosh, no, not another one. It's such an acceptance because we're nurturers and we just want to receive and really give out that care and giving. Normally that age comes around 49 years old. There's a 0.25% that's ages of 18 to 34. And in this realm of caregiving has to be more of a challenge because of the mentality that's taking place at that time, to be taking care of somebody who's a lot older and needs that special care attention, because they could be jamming on their phones or whatever while they're dropping them off for their appointments, whatever, because they're in a young age. It is their job and there are certain requirements, but high school is really the biggest one in caregiving that I've read about. When you talk about that handicap issue, I had gone over an episode where women in the workplace, there had been a social management research team that had done data over the past 10 years of what's changed and what hasn't, and a lot hasn't. And a lot hasn't, especially for disabilities. So one of the situations on that was a comment where this woman, she had a speech impairment, but the job was run great, but the leadership and to elevate in that position wasn't eligible because of her speech impairment. So I don't understand how, you're so well to process the job, but now to that next level, they're not looked at in that way. There's a lot of other women who are affected in this research situation because nothing has really changed much. But my biggest thing was that I didn't see any type of policies reaching out on the movement for menopause. This is so important for us women. And so by seeing what you're seeing on your disability side, when your effects are, because aging is inevitable and the path that we choose, I'm hoping that this gives us more of a design to bring out in our lives because we're hearing this. As I said, I don't know that if I wasn't working, would I really have been thinking of some of the things that I've learned from these women to think ahead. So I like to take you through that tunnel vision to really think ahead. And how does the legal system respond when women fail to plan ahead financially, Shauna?
Yeah, so I think that old adage, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. And so what happens is there are kind of de facto processes. Of course, we do recommend a plan, and in the plan, you would have, say, a will and a power of attorney and a medical power of attorney. The beautiful thing about the medical directive is it indicates whether you would like to continue to receive medical treatment in certain situations, because some people prefer not to have surgeries if they believe they're at end of life. Now, if you don't have a plan, then you have de facto decision makers. So would that be a spouse? Would that be a surviving parent? I mean, my parents are still alive, and look at me, I have gray hair. So who's going to make the decision? I'm a widow. If I don't designate someone, it may actually be my parents. How interesting is that? And then it could end up being your children. So the law provides for a de facto, the next person to decide for you. The thing is, that person may not hold the same values that you hold. That person, especially today, you have people who prefer naturopathic type of treatments. You have other people who are totally traditional medicine. That's a big divide. Maybe you're somewhere in the middle, but whoever's making decisions for you, they're going to substitute their judgment. That's what that's called, substituted judgment. I'm not a big fan of substituted judgment because nobody else could know your intentions. So I really urge people to have a plan. The documents are standardized, at least in Nevada. Usually almost every state has a standard power of attorney form. It's actually in the statute. And then they have a medical directive form. In Nevada, we can record the medical directive with the Nevada Secretary of State. It's called a lockbox. And so if a 911 responder, someone, emergency room, if I happen to be there, no one knows me, then they can check that lockbox. They see my next of kin, my contact, what are my wishes. It's really important in a state like Nevada where we have a lot of sun cities. A lot of people have moved here and they're away from family. So that's just one example of what you want to do so it can go right. Where it can really go wrong if you don't have the plan or trusted support system and you need to check your plan regularly, because unfortunately our designee may pass before us or some of being incapacitated. So if you don't, then you're just in the hands of whatever caretaker is around. And so what we see with older people is sometimes, I would say 80% of the time it's working really well. And that's great. So don't be afraid. I don't say these things to alarm people. Most people are loving, of their family. But for those, maybe a grandchild ends up on drugs, and then maybe they're lonely and they meet some Romeo type of person. And for a variety of reasons, someone comes in and gains trust and then exploits them. So this is the next most common thing we're seeing. You can check. We have in Nevada Adult Protective Services. Their reports are public information, and not the names because that's confidential, but the statistics that unfortunately most abuse is by a known family member, and it's usually financial exploitation. So if you don't have a plan, you're leaving yourself open to complete financial exploitation. And then you're really at the mercy of the state and strangers because you wouldn't even have the finances to support yourself. So not to paint a scary picture, but having a plan makes all the difference.
And that's exactly why this is the awareness and the preparedness, because we really have to look at that. And this is what I meant about seeing them when they come to the hospital. Sometimes some of those women have a lot of fear in the way they look, when this caregiver's with them. And, there's nothing I can do but to see that and just hope for the best when she leaves. And, know that when I was with her and she was in my hands at that time, I know her service and empathy and heartfelt care was being given to her, and she can feel that. But for what I see sometimes. This is why I really want women to be aware and that preparedness, because on the darker side of things, as you talk about, I've been hearing recently, and this is from family and friends and things like that, who are caregivers and have other people in the family. So this is a person, she's a caregiver, right? So she was supporting this one male, and then they stopped her from caregiving and gave it to somebody in the family. This person's getting paid for that. But the other day, when she had to go meet with them in the hospital because she knew a lot more on how to calm him down and things like that, she saw his presentation and it was very, disgusting. He should have been more cleaned up. He should have been, and this person is getting paid for that. And there's dark sides to these things on this disability, as you said. And for that financial side, when they lose the guardianship or lose over their personal assets, how does somebody, because as we mature, I mean, what would be that good age where you actually start thinking about it? Because accidents can happen. It doesn't have to wait till you're out of work.
Yeah, I would say it's a couple of considerations. One is the long-term care planning. So if you can get a long-term care insurance, it's a little bit of a cost, but it's going to assure that in your older age, if your children are unavailable or unwilling to care for you, then you have provided for that. And so that would supplement, say, your Social Security or retirement. So I would say earlier the better with long-term care insurance because the premiums are lower when you're younger. So a lot of us did not do so. And so we're kind of, scrambling to catch up. At an older age, I have to make more money and save more money to pay for the long-term care if it became necessary, say, for me to go into skilled nursing, because those happen when something acute happens. You've had a stroke or you have, dementia, then you need to be in a facility. It's very expensive. So that's one way, long-term care. The other is the plan is absolutely necessary the minute you have a child. You want to take your chances before you have children, fine. But the minute you have a child, you need a plan. You need life insurance. You need to nominate a guardian for that child if something happens to you, because you're responsible for a minor, another human being. As we have more responsibility, now we're taking care of our aging parents. We have ourselves, we have our teenagers. It's very critical to have a plan because you're thinking about their financial arrangements as well as yours. And I really do urge people to just take out insurance. If you feel like you're not making enough money to support maybe your children through college, or make sure your parents are taken care of if you have a severe, incident or episode and you're not able to work, then certain types of insurance can cover that. So insurance is a really useful way. And most of my clients, when I was in private practice, they would also take their insurance and name once they aged out. So now their kids are out of college, 25, their parents have died. And so maybe they're 55. Now they would make the beneficiary, say, a charity. So the plan can mature and change with you depending on the needs. So insurance is a good example because when your children are young, they're the beneficiaries. But when they age out, now you can make it your passion charity and leave a legacy. So it's a win-win for everyone. And the younger you are to get the insurance, the less expensive it is and the more guaranteed your rate is. So some of us who are older, we still should add that. It's just going to cost a little bit more.
So are you seeing, as I was saying, because women have taken over the workforce in numbers and it's stronger that way. So, but are you seeing more disabilities that are males large on this scale, or is it just more women that are coming into this disability?
I think the thing about disabilities, it's proportionate to that workforce. So you might have a union that's predominantly male because it's physically demanding. Then we're going to see a higher incidence, say, of strokes, debilitating strokes, things, not workforce injury, but just because of the pressure of their job and the physical demands. And then, but if you have a workplace where I work for the state, it's predominantly women, then you might see female related, but they're not necessarily just because they're a female, but it's maybe because you're seated all the time. Then you have that hip or knee surgery doesn't work so well and it results in a permanent disability. That would be an example. Okay, so these are things that just usually aren't tied to females as much as they are to what was the job you were doing and how did you, well, it's never too early to learn to deal with that stress, right? Because that stress is number one underlying cause. And by the way, it just doesn't go away. So
Right.
I know you're giving us great tools to deal with our stress, no matter what our situation in life, and how very critical that is for women.
Well, and recently, Bradley Cooper, he's coming out with a new documentary on PBS channel, and it's a big, harsh reality on caregiving. I guess he was put into a position where he had to take care of his father, and then they go over a documentary about a man, and in this case, he had, a regular family building situation, and suddenly the woman, his wife, had issues, and so he had to step down. It's a really important program to watch, and it's very touching because it actually shows the levels of I guess not you have to, he had to step down. Okay, so he was way up here, but he had to come all the way down so that he can be able to receive the Medicaid or whatever kind of support the system would help give to help his wife provide, because he was making too much. I think that was a situation. I'm not sure. That's why you got to watch this. It's going to be really good. But it's just that it's very expensive to be poor. And when women come into these disability situations and things are being taken from them and they don't even know they're in this situation, it's really complicated.
Well, and Lisa, I do want to say one thing to that point. I think when situations seem dire, I think a lot of people, men or women, start to dip into then their retirement. And they're draining their retirement to fund the whatever caretaking, even if it's a legitimate responsibility. The thing is, it's very difficult to recoup that money later, and you're shorting yourself in your old age. So I really, really urge people, if you've been working 15, 25 years, you have a nice retirement, you need to leave it there. And I know there's going to be emergencies. You're going to be, desperate or inclined to take it out. The thing is, you're not thinking about when you're 70 or 75 or 80. You really have zero ability to go back to work. And so I would urge people, have a plan and then stick to the plan. One of the things you're mentioning, which is so very important, is the unexpected. So I would say we are 95% on plan and 5% pivot. We all survived a COVID already. We're women. We've survived early menopause, late menses, whatever. Okay, some of us have survived childbirth. So the thing is, try to preserve your plan, even when the unexpected happens, because things will level up. Unexpected will happen, but it will still level up. So I just encourage people, don't start running and tapping into your 401k or do this or that. Those assets are protected if you were forced to file bankruptcy or go on Medicaid, so that you can get, if you lose your job or have to full-time caretake, those are not included. They're not counted against you. You must leave those assets. Do you understand what I'm saying? So even if there's a reversal, do not tap into that. Just stick with your plan. But that's a good point you're making.
What are the common misconceptions that prevent women from securing their future effectively? Is it really
the common, maybe that someone else is going to take care of them, which I hope so. But I still know in this day and age, women, well, my husband just had a stroke. I don't know the passwords. I don't know how to pay bills. I'm like, are you kidding me? It's 2025. And so can he tell me the passwords? Like, how can I help you? But women, we have to know these things. We have to know how they work. Cannot be a turtle anymore. You are selling yourself short. If you don't feel confident, get another trusted advisor, a family member. In this case, they did trust a neighbor. It's very high up, a successful man, but they wanted it to be a man. And then they would disclose to him all the passwords and things. Whatever you need to do as a woman, do it. Do not think that forever your husband will be able to pay the bills for you. It's just not true.
Right. Oh, wow. Yes. I mean, that's a lot of sense. That's really very important. And for what strategies can help women invest wisely for unseen? Is that just really just that 401k? Is there some side thing that they should be doing outside of the insurance that you said? But once they leave that job, that insurance goes away too. So what would be something that would
Well,
be
insurance shouldn't go away because you can get the life and accident insurance, things like that, that stay with you. So they should not go away, not health insurance, but other types of insurance. I would say that the best thing that a woman can do for herself is to remain relevant in the workplace. So that as you age and your abilities, and then we have these tech demands on us, that we consider either education or like you have had a career change in the sense that you're embracing this educational platform and teaching because you've become a subject matter expert. And that is an amazing and beautiful transition. In fact, you're the model. And so I would encourage all women to be exploring their relevancy in the workplace and then have an alternative plan, because it's just not fun to be 72 and a checkout clerk at the grocery store. It's not fun. But if you need to pay for food, that's what you're going to end up doing. So I would say do this sooner, do it about every 5 years, take a look at the relevancy and make yourself as indispensable as possible to the workforce.
Let's go back a few seconds to that ageism thing you were talking about, because age is inevitable. So when you brought that subject up about ageism in the workplace, going back at 70 years old, I did have a lot of mammographers that did come back to the field and they were in that age bracket, and other techs would look at them because they had slowed down the production, the brain fog of what they forgot to do, and all these different things that had occurred. And they have to return for the insurance reasons, for the spouse, or for some reason. As you said, most women are the ones that usually are the ones that take back that control to help the family get through whatever these disabilities are. And so just talking about that ageism, that's so important. And again, this is why I speak on keeping ourselves in shape, doing the nurturing that we need to do for ourselves, because if we don't take care of us first, everybody else, as you said, is around us and they're all being taken care of and they're all doing great. But here we are sitting there and now it's our turn, and nobody wants to think that there's nobody there to help them. But that's how they find themselves. There's nobody there to help them. So this has really been an eye opener, and I really thank you for joining me for this program. Women in the workplace, the legal sides of things. It's very important that I didn't see that side of it, as I said, when these caretakers were coming in, bringing the patients, but wondering what happens on the side of things when their money's being taken care of and by, being used by somebody else and not taking care of them. So is there anything else that can be structured where, like an oversight, somebody can oversee that? Is there something to be in place to make sure that, you know what I mean? Because
So if your financial net worth is high enough, then you can have your accounts with a trust company, and they will take care of all your bill pay, and they will have very strict protocols, which does definitely protect your money. And you can do this also in conjunction with the lawyer, but generally it's $5 million net worth or higher. Some of the institutions will go down to 3 million or 2 million, but most people are somewhere under 2 million in net worth, so they don't qualify. So some states do have a financial management program that is a nonprofit public-private partnership. And for example, Oregon has an excellent program. We do not have one in Nevada, but as part of my position, I'm looking at that as a policy program to put in place for people with disabilities and older people. And that acts kind of like your bill pay, but also it has the strict criteria. So say I'm falling into a entrapment with a Romeo, thief who wants to take my money, these criteria would be too strict and he wouldn't be able to touch the money. And so it would be there for my lifetime and then distribute however I had said to my heirs. So that's a good question. And I would say maybe go to AARP for resources, even though they're for seniors, women. That's a great resource for women because they have a lot of the same issues that seniors have. And disabled people, go to AARP, go to some of these, and then go to your Department of Health and Human Services in your state, DHHS. And they will also have some of these programs. And also that's where your adult protective services to report if you believe your neighbor or friend is being abused, isolated, or neglected. Please call your APS.
Wow, that's really great news. Thank you so much for that, because this is the concern about who's going to oversee the overseer. You know what I mean? Because somebody, as I said, they're not always doing what they're supposed to be doing. But as we close this out, so, I always believed in myself being one of those Nightingale nurses, coming back from that era, really wanting to be in that white. That was the dream when I walked into medical. I wanted to be in that white coat and I wanted to be Nightingale. But you like Helen Keller. So tell me how she changed or affected you in this development of your whole life. I mean,
Helen Keller had a profound impact on me. She was very extensive writer. She had published 12 to 15 books, of which about 10 are still in print. So I'd recommend everyone to get those, take a look at it. Very inspiring because of the disabilities that she overcame. And in light of the fact that she never recovered her hearing or her sight, she did teach herself to speak, very difficult because she was struck with this illness about 18 months. So she had a little experience with sound, but the speech is pretty bad. But she supported herself her entire life. She went to college at 18. She graduated from college. She was very articulate through her translator. And she had to make a living in a day over 100 years ago when women, couldn't make a living for herself and her translator. So what she did is she would travel with vaudeville, and she was the kind of oddity attraction, and she would speak about her experience through her translator. And she met the Queen of England. She knew Charlie Chaplin. I mean, she was on the circuit. And so she had a very full life and very upbeat, very positive. And she just is quite an inspiration to me. And so I would encourage everyone, this is what a life can look like no matter what your challenge is.
Well, thank you so much. That is so beautiful. I didn't know she was that big in the circuit, so I will have to try to read that book.
Well, and she was the first woman to receive an honorary degree from Harvard, and that's not a small thing.
No.
Yeah, she's legit.
And just by writing books too. I mean, I can't imagine. Thank you so much, Shauna, for sharing all this great information for my women in the workplace. And, all these women, I mean, we all need that support and, uplifting preparedness to be aware, because again, we've all come into this big work field. And now as we're starting to exit out, there's a lot of things that we didn't look long-term because our structures have always been made for men. And they didn't have to really look that far. As you said, most caretakers are the women, right? So, this really brings home a lot and really is an awakening. So thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining us here at prconnectionsradio.com. And again, liberating menopause. This is where I want to have that voice to speak out and make things happen. It's going to take a long time to break down these walls, but it's happening and it's the movement. And thank you, Shauna, again, for joining us.
Thank you for everything you do, Lisa. So important.
Thanks.
PR Connections Radio thanks you for watching this podcast. Check out more episodes of this show and our others at prconnectionsradio.com.